Ever get that feeling? Like you've got this list of things you really want to do, maybe even need to do, but somehow you just don't.
Oh, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. It's like that universal struggle. We all want to be productive and make the most of our time,
Yeah.
but then there's Netflix.
Right. And that's exactly what we're diving deep into today. This whole idea of overcoming laziness, unlocking that potential to actually get things done. And our guide for this journey is The Art of Laziness.
Don't let that title fool you, though.
Definitely not.
It's not about embracing laziness, but more about understanding it.
Yeah, and then using that understanding to become more productive, like way more intentional with how we spend our time.
It's packed with all sorts of useful stuff, practical advice, techniques, and even some philosophical perspectives that kind of make you rethink the whole thing.
The goal here is to help you, the listener, actually use this stuff. So we're going to pull out the most important bits from this book.
Exactly. The key takeaways, those nuggets of wisdom, that can really make a difference.
Because at the end of the day, it's about making the most of the weeks we have, right? Living a life with fewer what-ifs.
Absolutely. When you really stop and think about it,
Yeah.
time, it's not infinite, is it? The average person lives, like 72 years? That's only about 3,700 weeks.
Wow, when you put it like that.
And let's say you're around 30 years old. Well, you've already used up about 1,500 of those weeks. It's a bit of a wake-up call, isn't it?
It really is. It makes you realize how precious time is. And it can be so frustrating when you feel like you're wasting it, not spending it on the things that truly matter.
And that leads us right to the big question we're tackling today. It's the heart of what the art of laziness is all about. How can we break free from that laziness trap and start chasing those goals, the things we really want to achieve?
Right. And I think one of the first big ideas the book throws at you is this concept of taking full responsibility, like 100% responsibility for your own life.
Yeah, it's like a core principle.
It might feel good to blame outside stuff for why we're not getting things done, but
it keeps you stuck.
Exactly. The book argues that even when you can't change the situation itself,
You can always choose how you respond to it.
yeah, and you can always try to do the best you can within those limitations.
I love how the book frames blame as a form of powerlessness. Like it's giving away your control.
Oh, I see what you mean. Can you give an example?
Sure. Think about it this way. If you constantly say, I can't exercise because I don't have time, well, you're basically letting your schedule control you. You're giving it the power.
Right, instead of finding ways to fit it in, even if it's just for a little bit.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
The book is all about finding the best possible action in any situation, even if it's not the easiest. It's about making a conscious choice, not just going with the flow.
It's like taking back the reins.
Exactly.
And it's not just about the present, right? The book also talks about learning from the past, but not letting it hold you back. We all make mistakes. It's part of life.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
The important thing, though, is to learn from those mistakes and then move on.
Don't dwell on them. Right, because that's what keeps you stuck.
The book actually puts it pretty bluntly. Says that not moving on from a mistake is like making a second mistake.
That's such a good way to put it.
So thinking about your own goals, have you ever totally dropped the ball on something important?
Oh, of course, hasn't everyone?
But the question is, what did you do after? Did you just beat yourself up about it?
Or did you analyze it? Figure out what went wrong so you could do better next time.
Exactly. And the book is definitely pushing you towards that second option. Analyze, learn, and move forward.
And the book doesn't sugarcoat things either. It has this section called Harsh Truths.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
It basically says straight up, if you're always feeling lazy, unhappy, or procrastinating, well, it's on you to change that.
I can see how that might sound harsh at first.
It does, but there's a positive flip side to it.
It's empowering in a way.
Exactly. Because it means you have the power to make different choices. Yeah. It's not about blaming external factors. It's about taking control of your own life.
It reminds me of that Chinese proverb, the one about planting a tree. The best time was 20 years ago, but the second best time is now.
That's so true.
So powerful. We can't change the past, but we have the power to shape our future starting right now.
And I think that ties into the idea the book talks about focusing on your business, not getting caught up in every little thing that's happening around you, but really honing in on what matters to you.
Yeah, conserving your energy for the stuff that truly makes a difference in your life.
Right. The book uses this story about a farmer and sparrows to illustrate that point. So these sparrows have their nest in a field, and every time the farmer talks about harvest, the young sparrows freak out.
They're worried about the nest getting destroyed, right?
Exactly, and they keep asking their mom, what are we going to do? Will the farmer's friends help us move the nest? And the mom's like, don't worry, someone will help. But then one day, The farmer says he's going to harvest the field himself.
And that's when the mother sparrow finally decides to move the nest.
Yep. Because she realizes no one else is going to do it for them. They have to take action themselves.
It's a powerful message about self-reliance. Don't wait for someone else to save you.
Right. Take control, take charge, do it yourself.
And speaking of taking charge, the book talks about 3 types of people in the world. Those who never even start, those who quit as soon as things get tough,
And the ones who keep going no matter what.
the persistent ones who eventually achieve their goals, that 1%. And the message is clear. Aim to be in that 1%.
You're going to face challenges, that's a given. But it's your persistence that determines whether you succeed or not.
So much of this boils down to focusing on what you can control, right? Your thoughts, your effort, the actions you take.
And don't waste energy on the things you can't control.
Like other people's opinions?
Exactly. It's a recipe for frustration.
Okay, so we've talked about taking responsibility, learning from the past, and focusing on what we can control. What's next?
Well, now we got to tackle that comfy little enemy of progress. The comfort zone.
Ah, yes, the comfort zone, that place where motivation goes to die.
It's so easy to get stuck there. It feels safe, familiar,
But staying there for too long can really stifle your growth.
and let laziness take root big time.
Think about it. How many times have you spent hours scrolling through social media or binge-watching shows?
When you knew you had other stuff you should be doing,
It feels good in the moment, but afterwards.
you're often left with this nagging feeling of, ugh, I just wasted so much time.
And a sense of unfulfillment, like you could have been doing something more meaningful.
Exactly. And here's a key point the book makes. Act now. Don't wait for your motivation or energy to magically appear.
Because it might never happen, right?
Chances are it won't. There's this tendency to think, oh, I'll get to it later when I feel more motivated. But the thing is,
Later never comes.
or if it does, you're not going to have that same level of energy.
It's like we talked about earlier, time is finite.
Seize the moment. Don't wait for some perfect future that might never exist.
The book also says you rarely hear anyone say they regret stepping outside their comfort zone.
That's true. It might be scary, challenging even.
The sense of accomplishment you get on the other side, priceless.
And the personal growth, it's huge.
So how do we actually get ourselves to take that first step to break out of that comfort zone?
Well, the book has some good advice on that, and it might surprise you. It's all about keeping things simple.
Keep it simple.
Yeah, don't overthink it.
Because overthinking can lead to analysis paralysis.
100%.
Yeah.
You get so caught up in planning and perfecting every tiny detail that you never actually start.
I do that all the time.
The book quotes Jeff Bezos, and it's so relevant. Most decisions should probably be made with somewhere around 70% of the information you wish you had. If you wait for 90%, in most cases, you're probably being slow.
It's about taking action, not just planning endlessly.
Exactly. And remember, to get different results, to really break free from that laziness cycle, you got to think differently.
Not just follow the crowd.
If you keep doing the same things as everyone else, well,
You're going to keep getting the same results.
it's like a recipe for staying stuck.
So new thinking, new actions, and I guess that brings us to setting goals, right?
Yes. And the book is really big on this. Especially when you're trying to overcome laziness, you got to start with goals that are small,
Yeah.
easy to understand,
And clearly defined.
like super specific. The book uses this great example. It compares a vague goal like be healthier.
To something concrete like lose 2 pounds in the next month.
There's a difference.
Yeah. One's kind of fuzzy and the other one is super clear.
Exactly. Measurable and with a time frame.
And the book also emphasizes the power of actually writing down your goals.
Oh, yeah. It sounds simple, but it really does make a difference.
Makes them more tangible, like a real commitment.
You don't need fancy apps or systems for that either.
Sometimes a pen and paper does the job just fine.
It's about the action, not the tools, right?
Absolutely. Okay, so we've got our goals set. Now, how do we actually stick to them?
Well, this is where it gets a bit tricky because we humans are wired for instant gratification.
We want it all, and we want it now.
Exactly. But the book explains how constantly giving in to that urge, to procrastination, it leads to regret down the line.
And this feeling of unease, like you're not living up to your potential.
It's like those little dopamine hits you get from instant pleasure. They're great in the moment, but
In the long run, they don't really contribute to anything meaningful.
and they can leave you feeling empty. The book really drives home this point about considering future regret. Think about how you'll feel weeks, months, even years from now about the choices you're making today.
It's like a gut check. Will I regret spending hours scrolling instead of working towards my goals?
Exactly. And the advice is to make those short-term sacrifices now for the sake of your future self. It's about delaying gratification.
And it's not always easy, but like picturing that future self happy and successful because of the choices you made today.
That can be powerful motivation.
Definitely. And the book also talks about embracing risk, calculated risk.
That's a big one. Because the potential regret of not even trying, it could be way worse than the fear of failing.
The book quotes Mark Zuckerberg on this, and it's a good one. He says, "The biggest risk is not taking any risk. In a world that's changing really quickly, the only strategy that's guaranteed to fail is not taking risks."
I love that quote. It's so true.
The book also tells the story about a farmer and his horse, and it really illustrates how you can't always predict the outcome of a situation. Like, what seems bad at first might turn out to be a blessing in disguise.
And vice versa, right?
Exactly. So it's a good reminder to not let the fear of negative results paralyze us. Sometimes you just got to take the leap.
Absolutely. And once you've taken that leap, you need the fuel to keep going, to stay on track.
Which brings us to self-discipline.
The backbone of getting things done.
The book defines it as doing what's good for your future self, even when it's hard in the present.
It's that classic battle between what you want to do and what you know you should do.
Like choosing to go to the gym when all you want to do is curl up on the couch and watch TV.
Or working on that important project instead of scrolling through social media. We've all been there.
It's all about those choices.
And the book gives you this really good question to ask yourself in those moments of temptation. Will I regret not doing this in the future?
If the answer is yes, then you know what you got to do.
Discipline means doing it anyway, even if it's tough.
No excuses.
And the book is very clear about the enemy of discipline, procrastination.
Oh yeah, the master of excuses.
It's so easy to fall into that trap, to find reasons to put things off. But the book's message is loud and clear. Do it now.
And it reinforces that message with a quote from Picasso. He said, "Only put off until tomorrow what you are willing to die having left undone."
Powerful stuff. And it also busts this myth that there were all these easy hacks for productivity.
It's about putting in the work consistently.
No shortcuts to success.
Right. But it's not always about pushing through. Sometimes it's about finding perspective.
Absolutely. And I love the story the book tells about the king in the ring.
Oh, yeah. So the king was going through some tough times and was feeling really down, right?
And he asked his wise men for something that would help him through both good times and bad.
So they gave him a ring with the inscription, "This too shall pass."
It's a reminder that nothing lasts forever.
Both good and bad times eventually come to an end.
So don't let setbacks completely derail you, and don't get too comfortable when things are good.
Just keep going. Okay, so we've talked about self-discipline, but what are we actually disciplining ourselves to do?
That's a great question. The book emphasizes working on the right things.
Because you can be super disciplined and work really hard, but
If you're working on things that don't matter to you, you're going to burn out.
you're not going to find fulfillment.
Exactly. The book really connects happiness and feeling fulfilled with doing work you love. It actually highlights the potential regret of looking back on a career spent doing something that felt meaningless.
So the advice is pretty clear. If you dread your work, start looking for something else.
Yeah. Find something that excites you, something that makes you want to jump out of bed in the morning.
But even work you love will have its challenges.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
It's not going to be sunshine and rainbows all the time. The book uses the example of Vincent van Gogh, who faced a lot of rejection and hardship in his life.
But he never gave up on his passion.
Exactly. And that's the key. Even when things get tough, you got to keep going if it's truly important to you.
So it's about prioritizing, focusing your energy on those tasks that align with your goals.
Instead of spreading yourself thin across a million different things.
The book also has this interesting perspective on opportunities. Instead of chasing them,
Focus on becoming the best version of yourself.
and let the opportunities come to you. I like that.
It's a much more empowering approach.
And before we move on, I think it's worth mentioning the book's little pep talk, where it tells you, you are great.
Oh, yeah. A reminder to silence that negative self-talk that can hold us back.
Because we all have those inner critics.
It's about shutting them down and believing in yourself.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in terms of mindset, but there's this one trap the book talks about that I think a lot of people fall into: perfectionism.
Oh, yeah. Perfectionism, it can be so sneaky.
It disguises itself as this desire to do things really well, to achieve flawless results.
but it often ends up becoming a form of procrastination.
You're so busy trying to make everything perfect before you even start that.
You never actually start.
Exactly.
And the book uses some interesting examples to illustrate this, like Leonardo da Vinci. The guy was a genius, but he also had this tendency to leave projects unfinished.
He was always striving for perfection.
And then you have someone like Steve Jobs, who is incredibly detail-oriented, but also understood that sometimes you just got to ship the product.
Done is better than perfect.
In many cases, yes. The book suggests developing this ability to consciously switch perfectionism on and off. Like, know when it's truly necessary to be meticulous and when it's okay to just get things done.
It includes this great quote from Shane Parrish. If a decision is reversible, make it as soon as possible. If it's irreversible, make it as late as possible.
It's a good framework for deciding when to be really careful and when to just go for it.
Okay, so perfectionism can be a trap, but what about the opposite end of the spectrum? What about just settling for mediocrity?
The book is pretty clear on this one. Reject it.
It frames life as a choice between striving for excellence and just coasting along, accepting good enough.
And it makes a strong argument that achieving anything truly meaningful, anything that really makes a difference, requires consistent effort.
And a willingness to fail, learn from those failures, and keep going.
Absolutely. The book argues that settling for mediocrity leads to unhappiness and this lack of real motivation. And quotes Steve Jobs again, he says, "Your work is going to fill a large part of your life, and the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work. And the only way to do great work is to love what you do. If you haven't found it yet, keep looking. Don't settle."
I love that quote, don't settle.
And, the book also touches on how the people around you, their attitudes and behaviors, can influence your own if you're surrounded by people who are content with mediocrity.
It can be hard to break free from that.
It's like this invisible force pulling you down.
So surround yourself with people who inspire you, people who are driven and ambitious.
Yes. Find your tribe, your people.
The ones who challenge you to be better.
And don't be afraid to dream big, even if it means failing sometimes.
Because, as the book says, the regret of never trying is far greater than the pain of a failed attempt.
So true. Okay, so we've covered a lot of mindset stuff. Ready to move on to some more practical techniques.
Let's do it. Bring on the practicalities.
All right, so the book has this whole section on specific tips and techniques for boosting productivity. And it starts with this really common trap: multitasking.
Ah, yes, the myth of multitasking. We think we're being super efficient, but
research has shown that it actually makes us less efficient.
And more prone to making mistakes.
Exactly. The book uses this really interesting example, the story of the Mars Climate Orbiter.
Oh, yeah, the spacecraft that was lost because of a simple unit conversion error?
Yep. And that error was partly attributed to the team's multitasking habits. They were trying to do too many things at once.
It cost NASA millions of dollars.
So the lesson here is clear. When you try to split your focus across multiple tasks, your concentration suffers, and you're more likely to make mistakes.
So how do we combat this multitasking urge?
Well, the book gives some really concrete advice. First, consciously avoid switching between tasks. When you're working on something, give it your full attention.
No jumping back and forth.
Exactly. Second, create a distraction-free environment. Put your phone on silent, close, unnecessary tabs on your computer.
Turn off notifications.
All of it. Minimize those interruptions.
I need to do that.
We all do. And third, the book emphasizes the importance of identifying your most important tasks and ruthlessly prioritizing them.
So basically, figure out what really matters and focus on those things first.
Exactly. And be willing to let go of the things that aren't really contributing to your goals.
Easier said than done sometimes.
Oh, yeah. But it's so important. And, the book also talks about the power of taking short naps.
Naps?
Yeah, like strategic power naps.
I'm all for that.
They can help you recharge and regain focus. But the key is to keep them short, like 20 minutes or so.
And avoid napping too late in the day.
Right. You don't want to mess up your sleep schedule.
Okay, so no more multitasking, prioritize tasks, and take strategic naps. What else does the book recommend?
Well, it talks about the importance of establishing a daily routine.
A routine, I've heard that before.
It sounds basic, but it's so powerful. A good routine creates predictability, enhances focus, and helps you prioritize those important but not so fun tasks over the easy, tempting ones.
So it's not just about getting things done, it's about getting the right things done.
Exactly. And the book reminds us that our daily actions are shaping our future, like little by little. What we consistently do day after day It adds up.
It makes me think of that saying, we are what we repeatedly do.
That's a good one. And the book actually dives into Leo Tolstoy's daily routine, which was super structured. He had this journal where he'd track all his activities, and it's fascinating to see how disciplined he was.
What did his routine look like?
Well, he'd wake up super early, like 5 a.m., go for an hour-long walk, then dedicate time to writing. He also took an afternoon nap and made sure to get enough sleep. It was all very deliberate and planned out.
So the book is encouraging us to find our own optimal routine.
Yeah. Figure out what works best for you, especially when it comes to your wake-up time.
Because that sets the tone for the whole day.
Exactly. And it also recommends taking a few minutes each day to just sit alone in silence.
Sit alone.
Yeah, like 5 to 10 minutes of just quiet contemplation.
Interesting. What's the purpose of that?
The book quotes Blaise Pascal, who said, "All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone."
Wow, that's pretty deep.
It is. And it makes sense, right? When
Yeah.
we're constantly bombarded with stimulation, it's hard to really think clearly and figure out what we truly want.
So taking a few minutes to just be still, to quiet the mind.
It can help you gain clarity, process your thoughts and emotions, and just feel more grounded.
And less likely to fall into those laziness traps.
Exactly. And speaking of traps, the book also uses a great analogy for how distractions can sabotage our productivity.
What's the analogy?
The Trojan horse.
Oh, I see where this is going.
So the Trojans thought they'd won the war and brought this giant wooden horse into their city as a victory trophy.
A little did they know.
It was filled with Greek soldiers.
And those soldiers snuck out at night and opened the city gates, allowing the Greek army to conquer Troy.
And the book's point is that distractions, even small ones, can be like those Greek soldiers. They sneak into our minds, disrupt our focus, and before we know it,
Our productivity is gone.
and it takes time and energy to get back on track.
So the book's advice, be wary of those Trojan horses.
Identify your distractions and eliminate them.
Like deleting those time-sucking apps from your phone.
Yep. It's about taking control of your environment and minimizing those distractions that constantly pull you away from your goals.
Okay, so we've got our routines, we're minimizing distractions. What else can we do to boost our productivity?
Well, this one might be a little uncomfortable for some people, but it's crucial.
Hmm.
Learn to say no.
Oh, say no, that's a tough one.
It is. But it's essential for managing your time and energy effectively. If you're constantly saying yes to every request, every
You
invitation.
just end up feeling overwhelmed and stretched thin.
Exactly. And you end up sacrificing your own goals and priorities to please others.
The book quotes Josh Billings, who said, "Half of the troubles of this life can be traced to saying yes too quickly and not saying no soon enough."
And there's another great quote, this one from Seneca. "If you don't know what port you sail to, no wind is favorable."
Meaning, if you don't have clear goals, you're going to get pulled in all sorts of directions.
Exactly. So learn to say no, politely but firmly. It's about protecting your time and focusing on what truly matters to you.
It's about setting boundaries.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, there's this common misconception that being productive means working all the time, like 24/7.
The hustle culture mentality.
Right. But the book actually cautions against that. It clarifies that true productivity isn't about logging more hours
It's about achieving more meaningful results in less time.
and ultimately having a more balanced life.
Work-life balance, that's the goal.
The book quotes Sahil Bloom, who said, 20 years from now, the only people who will remember you worked late are your kids.
It's a good reminder to prioritize what truly matters.
And the book emphasizes measuring your productivity by the results you achieve, not just the hours you put in.
So quality over quantity.
Exactly. It also suggests that sometimes overworking can actually be a form of procrastination.
How so?
Well, you might be avoiding those really important but difficult tasks by burying yourself in busy work.
Oh, I see. So it's about being strategic with your time and effort.
Right. And remembering that life is short. Do you really want to spend all your time working, even if it's productive work? What about your relationships, your hobbies, your own personal growth?
It's about finding that balance.
The book introduces the concept of less is more, suggesting that if you're constantly working long hours without seeing significant results, maybe you're not working on the right things, or maybe you're not working smart enough.
It makes me think of that quote by Stephen Covey. If the ladder is not leaning against the right wall, every step we take just gets us to the wrong place faster.
Perfect analogy. It's about making sure you're climbing the right ladder, working towards your own goals, not someone else's.
So be productive, not just busy. Okay, we talked about a lot of great strategies, but sometimes the biggest hurdle is simply getting started.
Oh, I hear you. That initial inertia can be tough to overcome.
The book emphasizes the importance of starting now, like right now,
Don't wait for that mythical right time to magically appear.
because it probably won't.
Chances are it's just another form of procrastination in disguise.
So no more waiting, just start taking action.
The book distinguishes between laziness and patience. It encourages being impatient with action and patient with results.
I like that distinction. So be eager to get started, but don't expect overnight success.
Exactly. It's about playing the long game. And the book uses this great analogy, the story of the bamboo tree.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one. So bamboo takes years to grow, right?
Yeah, it spends the first several years developing a massive root system underground.
You don't see any visible growth above ground for a long time.
But then all of a sudden,
It shoots up like crazy.
exactly, it can grow several feet in a single day.
Yeah.
And the book's point is that sometimes our efforts, they're like that bamboo root system.
We might not see immediate results, but that doesn't mean we're not making progress.